I never imagined that walking into my own family's anniversary celebration would become the night I discovered my entire life was built on lies. My sister Melissa had been whispering with our cousins all evening, shooting me those familiar looks of superiority. She had something planned, something designed to embarrass me in front of everyone who mattered. But what I uncovered that night about our family's finances, about the inheritance I was supposed to receive, and about the systematic way I had been excluded from decisions that affected my future, would make her petty schemes look like child's play. Before we dive into this family drama that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about blood loyalty, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever felt like the outsider in your own family, and subscribe, because this story has more twists than a soap opera. And trust me, you will want to see how this revenge unfolds. The Henderson family estate had always been our gathering place for major celebrations, and Mom and Dad's 35th wedding anniversary was no exception. As the younger daughter, I had grown accustomed to being treated as an afterthought, but something felt different that evening. Melissa, my older sister by 3 years, kept exchanging meaningful glances with our parents, and there was an undercurrent of excitement that seemed to exclude me entirely. I am Savannah Henderson, 28 years old, and I had always been the responsible one. While Melissa pursued her art degree and then floated between jobs, I worked my way through business school and built a solid career in financial consulting. Despite my success, I remained the family disappointment, somehow never quite measuring up to Melissa's charm and social connections. The evening started typically enough. Extended family filled the house, everyone dressed in their finest, celebrating a marriage that had produced 2 daughters and built a successful real estate business. Dad had started Henderson Properties from nothing, and over the decades, it had grown into a multi-million-dollar enterprise with commercial holdings throughout the state. During dinner, I noticed Mom kept checking her phone and whispering with Melissa. When dessert was served, Dad stood up with a champagne flute calling for everyone's attention. His voice carried that booming confidence that had made him successful in business. Tonight is not just about celebrating 35 wonderful years with my beautiful wife. He began, his arm around Mom's shoulders. It is also about announcing some exciting changes for our family business. My stomach tightened. Changes in the family business had never included me before, despite my financial expertise and repeated offers to help. As many of you know, Janet and I have been discussing succession planning for Henderson Properties. We want to ensure our legacy continues with the next generation. He paused, smiling broadly at Melissa. We are thrilled to announce that Melissa will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately. She has shown incredible vision for expanding our property portfolio, and we believe she represents the future of our company. The room erupted in applause, but I felt like the floor had dropped beneath me. Not only had I been excluded from this decision, I had not even been informed it was being considered. Melissa stood gracefully accepting congratulations with the poise of someone who had been preparing for this moment. Furthermore, Dad continued, we are restructuring our family trust. Melissa will receive controlling interest in Henderson Properties, along with the family estate and primary assets. This ensures continuity of leadership and vision. I set down my champagne flute with trembling hands. This was not just about a job or business decisions. This was about my inheritance, my future, my place in the family. Everything I had assumed about my security and belonging was crumbling in real time. After the formal announcement, I cornered Dad in his study. We need to talk. He looked uncomfortable, loosening his tie. Savannah, I know this might come as a surprise. A surprise, I interrupted. Dad, I have a master's degree in finance. I have offered repeatedly to help with the business. How is Melissa, who has never shown interest in real estate, suddenly qualified to run a multi-million-dollar company? His expression hardened. Melissa has been working with us behind the scenes for months. She understands the vision we have for expansion, the relationships we need to cultivate. This is not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. Behind the scenes. What does that mean exactly? She has been instrumental in securing several major deals: the Patterson development, the waterfront acquisition project, the downtown renovation partnership. Melissa brought in connections and opportunities that have increased our revenue by 30% this year alone. I stared at him in disbelief. That is impossible. Those deals required significant capital investment and financial analysis. How could she have managed that without any background in commercial real estate? Something flickered across his expression, a moment of uncertainty. She has been learning quickly. Natural talent runs in this family. But I knew my sister. Melissa was many things: charming, creative, socially gifted, but she was not a business strategist. She had never shown interest in financial planning or commercial development. The idea that she had suddenly become instrumental in major real estate transactions made no sense. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying Dad's words, trying to understand how I had missed such significant developments in our family business. How had Melissa managed to ingratiate herself so completely while I remained on the outside? The next morning, I decided to investigate. Using my financial consulting contacts, I began researching the deals Dad had mentioned. Public records for commercial real estate transactions are accessible, and I wanted to understand exactly what role Melissa had played in these supposed successes. What I discovered made my blood run cold. The Patterson development deal had been structured through a series of shell companies that obscured the true ownership structure. The waterfront acquisition involved partnerships with investors whose backgrounds I could not verify through normal channels. Most disturbing, the downtown renovation partnership appeared to involve inflated contracts and kickback arrangements that bordered on fraud. These were not legitimate business deals facilitated by Melissa's connections. They were sophisticated financial manipulations designed to extract money from Henderson properties while making it appear profitable on paper. I spent 3 days digging deeper, using my professional access to financial databases and public records. The pattern that emerged was systematic and deliberate. Someone with significant financial expertise had been orchestrating these transactions, creating artificial profits while siphoning actual assets away from the company. The more I investigated, the more convinced I became that Melissa was not the mastermind behind these schemes. She simply did not possess the technical knowledge required for such complex financial manipulation. But someone was using her as a front, and that someone had convinced my parents that she was a business genius deserving of control over our family's wealth. Armed with evidence of financial irregularities, I knew I needed to approach this situation carefully. Accusing my family of fraud without absolute proof would destroy relationships permanently, but ignoring potential crimes would make me complicit in whatever was happening to Henderson properties. I decided to start with Mom, hoping she might be more receptive to concerns about the business. I found her in her garden on a Thursday morning, tending to the roses that had always been her pride and joy. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the business decisions you and Dad announced at the anniversary party." She looked up from her pruning, her expression immediately guarded. "Savannah, your father and I have made our decision. Melissa has proven herself capable, and we believe she represents the best future for our company." "What exactly has she proven? Can you walk me through the specific contributions she has made?" Mom set down her gardening shears and faced me directly. "She has brought in new clients, identified profitable opportunities, and demonstrated leadership potential. Not everything needs to be analyzed through spreadsheets, honey. Sometimes you have to trust people and give them opportunities to grow." "Mom, I have been analyzing the recent deals that supposedly demonstrate her capabilities. There are serious irregularities in the financial structures. Money is being moved through shell companies, contracts are inflated beyond market rates, and some of the investor partnerships appear fraudulent." Her face went pale. "That is a serious accusation, Savannah." "I know it is. That is why I am bringing it to you first. I think someone is manipulating Melissa, using her as a front for financial crimes. Dad mentioned deals worth millions of dollars. If these transactions are not legitimate, our family could face criminal charges. Mom sat heavily on her garden bench, looking suddenly fragile. Show me what you found. I spent the next hour walking her through the documentation I had gathered. Public records showing suspicious ownership structures, contracts with inflated valuations, and financial flows that made no business sense. As I explained each irregularity, I watched understanding and fear grow in her expression. Who else knows about this? She asked finally. Just me so far. But Mom, if I can discover this information using public records, law enforcement or financial regulators could easily find it too. If Henderson Properties is involved in fraudulent transactions, even unknowingly, we could lose everything. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. What do you think we should do? First, we need to figure out who is actually orchestrating these deals. Melissa does not have the financial expertise to structure these transactions. Someone with significant knowledge of commercial real estate and financial manipulation is using her as a front. You think she is being manipulated? I think she is being used. The question is whether she knows it or if she genuinely believes she is contributing valuable business insights. That afternoon, Mom arranged for the three of us to meet at the Henderson Properties office. When we arrived, Melissa was already there reviewing what appeared to be architectural plans spread across the conference table. These expansion plans for the waterfront project look amazing, she said enthusiastically as we entered. Marcus thinks we can increase the retail space by 20% without compromising the residential units. Marcus? I asked. Marcus Sullivan, our new development partner. He has been instrumental in structuring these recent deals. His expertise in commercial development has been invaluable. I felt pieces clicking into place. Marcus Sullivan had been listed as a partner in several of the suspicious transactions, but I had not been able to find legitimate background information about him or his company. How did you meet Marcus? Mom asked carefully. He approached us about the Patterson development, said he had been following our company's success and wanted to propose a partnership opportunity. When I met with him, his knowledge of commercial real estate was impressive. He understood market trends and financial structures in ways that complemented Dad's experience perfectly. Melissa, how long have you been working with Marcus on these deals? About 8 months. Why are you both looking at me like that? I exchanged a glance with Mom, then decided to be direct. I have been investigating the recent transactions that Dad credited with increasing our revenue. There are significant irregularities in the financial structures. Money is being moved through shell companies, contracts appear inflated, and some partnerships seem designed to extract assets rather than generate legitimate profits. Melissa stared at me in shock. That is impossible. Marcus explained every deal to me in detail. These are sophisticated investment strategies designed to maximize returns while minimizing tax liability. Melissa, show me the documentation for the waterfront acquisition. I want to see the contracts and financial projections. She pulled out a thick folder filled with professional-looking documents. As I reviewed the paperwork, I recognized the sophisticated presentation that had probably convinced my parents of Melissa's sudden business acumen. The documents looked legitimate on the surface, with detailed financial projections and legal language that would impress someone without expertise in commercial real estate. But underneath the professional presentation, the numbers told a different story. The deal was structured to pay inflated consulting fees to Marcus Sullivan's companies while transferring actual ownership of valuable assets away from Henderson Properties. It was an elaborate con designed to look like legitimate business transactions. Melissa, these contracts are not what Marcus told you they were. Look at this clause about asset transfer, and this section about consulting fees. Henderson Properties is paying millions in fees while giving up ownership rights to properties we are supposedly acquiring. She leaned over my shoulder, reading the sections I pointed out. I watched confusion and then horror cross her face as she began to understand what the legal language actually meant. But Marcus said these were standard partnership agreements. He explained that the fee structure was normal for commercial development projects. Marcus Sullivan is committing fraud, and he has been using you to legitimize these transactions with our parents. You have been the front for a systematic plan to steal our family's assets." The conference room fell silent as the full implications sank in. Melissa had not suddenly become a business genius. She had been carefully manipulated by someone who understood exactly how to exploit family dynamics and her desire for recognition. "We need to call Dad," Mom said quietly. "And then we need to call our attorney. We need to—" The emergency family meeting that evening was unlike anything we had ever experienced. Dad arrived at the Henderson Properties office looking confused and irritated, clearly frustrated at being pulled away from a client dinner for what he assumed was more family drama. His expression changed rapidly as I walked him through the evidence I had compiled. Unlike Mom and Melissa, Dad had enough business experience to immediately grasp the implications of the financial irregularities. "This son of a bitch has been playing us for months," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I trusted Melissa's judgment about Marcus because the deals were producing results. I never looked closely at the underlying structures." "Dad, how much money are we talking about?" I asked. He was quiet for several minutes, calculating figures in his head. "If these contracts are structured the way you are saying, Henderson Properties has transferred ownership of approximately $12 million in assets while paying nearly $2 million in fees. But on paper, it looks like we have generated $4 million in new revenue. How is that possible? The revenue calculations include projected income from properties we no longer technically own, plus consulting fees that are actually being paid to Marcus's companies. It is sophisticated accounting manipulation designed to hide asset theft." Melissa had been silent throughout this conversation, her face pale with shock and growing anger. I trusted him completely. Marcus made me feel like I was contributing something valuable to the family business for the first time in my life. He listened to my ideas, praised my insights, made me believe I had natural business instincts. "Melissa, this is not your fault," Mom said firmly. "You were targeted by someone who studied our family dynamics and knew exactly how to manipulate the situation." "But I should have known. I should have understood what those contracts actually meant." "Marcus Sullivan is a professional con artist," I said. "He probably spent months researching our family, our business, and our relationships before approaching you. He knew that you wanted recognition from Dad, and he exploited that desire to gain access to our assets." Dad stood up abruptly, beginning to pace around the conference room. "The question now is what we do about it. We need to figure out how to stop this before he takes everything we have built. First, we need to involve law enforcement," I said. "This is criminal fraud on a massive scale, but we also need to be strategic about how we approach this. Marcus has probably covered his tracks carefully, and he may have additional plans we do not know about." "What kind of additional plans?" Melissa asked. "Think about it. He has spent 8 months gaining your trust and our parents' confidence. He has access to our financial information, our business relationships, and our family dynamics. Someone this sophisticated does not just steal $12 million and disappear. He probably has plans to take much more." Dad stopped pacing and looked at me directly. "What are you suggesting?" "We need to gather more evidence before we confront him or involve authorities. Right now, we have documentation of questionable transactions, but we do not have proof of intent to defraud or evidence of where our money has actually gone. If Marcus realizes we are onto him, he will disappear with everything he has already taken." "So, what do we do?" I had been thinking about this since discovering the first irregularities. "We need to continue working with him while secretly documenting everything. Melissa needs to maintain her relationship with Marcus while we gather evidence of his criminal activities." "You want me to keep pretending to trust him?" Melissa asked, her voice strained. "I want you to help us catch him. Marcus believes he has successfully manipulated our family and gained control of our assets. As long as he thinks his plan is working, he will continue operating openly. That gives us the opportunity to document his methods and identify where our money has gone. Mom looked worried. Is it safe for Melissa to keep meeting with him? We will be careful. But right now, Melissa is our best asset for gathering evidence. Marcus trusts her, confides in her, and includes her in planning future transactions. If we can document his criminal intentions and identify his associates, we can build a case that will not only recover our stolen assets, but ensure he faces serious criminal charges. Dad nodded slowly. It is risky, but Savannah is right. We need more evidence before we can take action. Over the next several days, we developed a careful strategy. Melissa would continue her regular meetings with Marcus while secretly recording their conversations. I would monitor all financial transactions and document the money trail. Mom and Dad would maintain normal business operations while quietly consulting with attorneys about our legal options. The plan required Melissa to continue acting like the naive family member who trusted Marcus completely, which was emotionally difficult given what we now knew about his manipulation. But she was determined to help us gather evidence and make him pay for what he had done to our family. Our first breakthrough came during a meeting Marcus had arranged to discuss a new investment opportunity. Melissa wore a small recording device as Marcus laid out plans for a development project that would require Henderson Properties to transfer ownership of our most valuable commercial properties as collateral for construction loans. This downtown revitalization project represents the culmination of everything we have been working toward, Marcus explained, spreading architectural plans across his office table. The potential returns are extraordinary, but it requires significant upfront commitment from Henderson Properties. What kind of commitment? Melissa asked, following our script. Your family would need to transfer deed ownership of the Main Street properties as collateral. Standard procedure for projects of this magnitude. Once construction is complete and the project generates revenue, ownership transfers back, plus substantial profit sharing. I listened to the recording later that evening with growing amazement at Marcus's audacity. He was proposing that we transfer ownership of properties worth approximately $8 million based on architectural plans for a project that probably did not exist. But the recording also provided crucial evidence of intent to defraud. Marcus was clearly planning to take ownership of our most valuable assets under the pretense of a legitimate business partnership. How many more recordings do we need? Melissa asked. The strain of maintaining her deception was beginning to show. A few more, I said. We need him to explain the financial structures in detail, identify his associates, and ideally get him to admit that previous deals were not what they appeared to be. Our second major breakthrough came when Marcus invited Melissa to meet his development team at an expensive downtown restaurant. She arrived with her recording device to find Marcus dining with two men who introduced themselves as investors and construction managers. During the conversation, it became clear that Marcus had been running similar schemes in other cities. They discussed previous partnerships with family businesses in Colorado and Florida, using language that strongly suggested systematic fraud targeting family-owned companies. The beauty of working with family businesses is the trust factor, one of Marcus's associates said. Once you establish credibility with one family member, the others typically follow without asking detailed questions. Melissa has been instrumental in that regard, Marcus replied. Her enthusiasm and family connections have made everything possible. After 2 weeks of secret recordings, we had documented Marcus's criminal intentions, identified his associates, and gathered evidence of similar frauds in other locations. Most importantly, we had recorded conversations where Marcus explicitly described how he had manipulated our family dynamics to gain access to our assets. It was time to spring our trap. We scheduled the confrontation for the following Tuesday at Henderson Properties. Our plan was straightforward. Present Marcus, with the evidence we had gathered, demand the return of our stolen assets, and give him the opportunity to cooperate before we involved law enforcement. Dad had contacted our family attorney, Robert Chen. Wait, I need to change that name. Robert Mitchell, who specialized in white-collar crime. Mitchell reviewed our recordings and documentation, confirming that we had sufficient evidence to pursue both criminal charges and civil recovery of our assets. The recordings clearly establish intent to defraud, Mitchell explained during our preparation meeting. Marcus explicitly describes manipulating your family relationships to gain access to assets, and his associates discuss similar schemes in other locations. This is organized criminal activity. Melissa was nervous about the confrontation, but determined to see it through. I want to look him in the eye when we expose what he has done. He made me feel stupid and naive, and I want him to know that his manipulation failed. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching the mood as we assembled in the Henderson Properties conference room. I had prepared a detailed presentation documenting every fraudulent transaction, complete with financial analysis, showing how Marcus had systematically stolen our assets while creating the illusion of profitable partnerships. Marcus arrived punctually at 10 o'clock, carrying his usual leather portfolio and wearing the confident smile that had initially charmed our family. He greeted everyone warmly, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. I am excited to finalize the downtown development partnership today, he said, settling into his chair. This project will establish Henderson Properties as a major player in commercial development throughout the region. Dad looked across the table with an expression Marcus had never seen before. Actually, Marcus, we need to discuss some concerns that have come to light about our previous partnerships. Something flickered in Marcus's expression, a momentary uncertainty that he quickly masked. Of course, I am always happy to address any questions or concerns. I opened my laptop and began presenting the evidence. Marcus, we have discovered that the Patterson Development waterfront acquisition and several other deals you structured were not legitimate business partnerships. They were sophisticated frauds designed to transfer ownership of our assets to companies you control. His face remained calm, but I noticed his hands tighten slightly on his portfolio. I am not sure what you mean, Savannah. All of our partnerships have been structured according to standard commercial development practices. Standard practices do not involve shell companies, inflated consulting fees, and asset transfers disguised as partnership agreements. I continued, clicking to the next slide. We have documentation showing that Henderson Properties has lost ownership of $12 million in assets while paying nearly $2 million in fraudulent fees. Those are serious accusations, Marcus said carefully. I think there may be some misunderstanding about complex commercial structures. Melissa leaned forward, her voice steady despite the emotional strain. Marcus, we have recordings of our conversations over the past 2 weeks. We know about the Colorado and Florida schemes. We know about your associates. We know that everything you told us about these partnerships was lies designed to steal our family's assets. For the first time, Marcus's composure cracked slightly. His eyes darted around the room, assessing the situation and probably calculating his options. I think there has been a significant misunderstanding, he said, his tone shifting toward damage control. Perhaps we should involve our respective attorneys to clarify the legal structures of these partnerships. Our attorney has already reviewed everything, Dad said. Robert Mitchell specializes in financial fraud cases. He confirms that your actions constitute criminal theft and that we have sufficient evidence for both criminal prosecution and civil asset recovery. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his confident facade finally beginning to crumble. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different tone entirely. You have no idea what you are dealing with, he said quietly. These partnerships involve investors with significant resources and influence. If you attempt to unravel these arrangements, there will be consequences that extend far beyond your family business. The implicit threat hung in the air like poison. This was no longer a discussion about business disagreements or misunderstandings. Marcus was revealing the true nature of his criminal organization and suggesting that our family could face retaliation for challenging them. Are you threatening us? I asked directly. I am explaining reality. The investors behind these development projects have substantial resources. They do not appreciate interference with profitable arrangements. If Henderson Properties attempts to disrupt established partnerships, you may find that your family faces difficulties that extend beyond financial losses. Dad stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. Get out of our office, now! I will give you 24 hours to reconsider your position, Marcus said, gathering his portfolio. After that, any disruption of our partnerships will be met with appropriate responses. He left without another word, but the atmosphere in the conference room remained toxic with implied violence and intimidation. We need to call law enforcement immediately, Mitchell said. Those were clear threats against your family's safety. But before we could act on that decision, our world exploded in ways we never anticipated. The next morning, I arrived at Henderson Properties to find 2 FBI agents waiting in the parking lot. Agent Sarah Rodriguez introduced herself and her partner, explaining that they were investigating financial irregularities involving Henderson Properties and wanted to discuss our business relationships. We understand that your company has been involved in several large commercial development partnerships over the past 8 months, Rodriguez said. We are investigating potential money laundering activities connected to organized crime, and Henderson Properties appears in multiple financial transactions that concern us. My stomach dropped. Agent Rodriguez, we discovered fraudulent activities yesterday and we're preparing to contact law enforcement ourselves. Ma'am, we need you to understand that Henderson Properties is currently under federal investigation for potential involvement in money laundering. Until this investigation is complete, all company assets are subject to seizure, and family members may face criminal charges. The room spun around me as the implications sank in. Marcus had not just stolen our assets, he had structured the thefts in ways that made Henderson Properties appear complicit in money laundering. We were not just victims of fraud, we had been set up to take the fall for his criminal organization's activities. We have been gathering evidence against Marcus Sullivan for weeks, I said desperately. We have recordings that prove he defrauded our family. We will need to review all evidence as part of our investigation, Rodriguez replied. But you should understand that the financial structures involved in these transactions suggest sophisticated knowledge of money laundering techniques. Someone with significant expertise facilitated these arrangements. I felt the walls closing in as I realized what Marcus had accomplished. Not only had he stolen our assets, he had created a paper trail that suggested our family had willingly participated in money laundering. The recordings we thought would exonerate us might actually appear to show our knowledge of criminal activities. Agent Rodriguez, my family was manipulated by Marcus Sullivan. He targeted us specifically because we were naive about commercial development. We trusted him because he convinced us that our daughter had natural business talents. Ma'am, sophisticated money laundering operations often involve legitimate businesses that provide cover for illegal activities. We need to determine whether Henderson Properties was an unwitting victim or a willing participant. As the agents left with promises to continue their investigation, I realized that Marcus's final move had been brilliant and devastating. He had not just stolen our money, he had destroyed our reputation and potentially our freedom. Even if we could prove our innocence, the federal investigation would ruin Henderson Properties and devastate our family's finances. That evening, we gathered at our parents' house, shell-shocked and trying to process the magnitude of what we faced. Criminal investigations, potential asset seizure, destroyed reputations, and the possibility that Dad and Melissa could face federal charges for money laundering. How did this happen? Mom asked quietly. How did trying to build our family business turn into a federal crime investigation? I knew the answer, but saying it out loud felt like admitting defeat. Marcus had played a longer game than we realized. He had not just wanted to steal our assets, he had wanted to destroy our family completely. 3 days after the FBI visit, as we struggled to understand the full scope of the charges we might face, I received an unexpected phone call that would transform our entire situation. Ms. Henderson, this is Detective Maria Santos from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. I understand your family has been working with someone named Marcus Sullivan. My heart raced. Yes, we discovered he has been defrauding our business, and now the FBI is investigating us for money laundering. Ms. Henderson Marcus Sullivan is not his real name. The man you know as Marcus Sullivan is actually David Richardson, and he has been running sophisticated fraud schemes targeting family businesses across multiple states. We have been tracking his organization for 2 years. I felt a surge of hope for the first time since the FBI agents had appeared at our office. Detective Santos, can you help us prove our innocence? Ma'am, I believe your family has been targeted by the same organization that destroyed 3 other family businesses in Colorado. David Richardson specializes in manipulation schemes that make his victims appear complicit in money laundering while he systematically steals their assets. Can you prove that to the FBI? I have been working with federal agents in multiple jurisdictions to build a case against Richardson's organization. Your recordings and documentation may be the missing pieces we need to demonstrate his pattern of targeting innocent families. Detective Santos arranged a conference call that afternoon with Agent Rodriguez, our attorney Robert Mitchell, and our entire family. What we learned during that conversation fundamentally changed our understanding of what had happened to Henderson Properties. David Richardson, the man you knew as Marcus Sullivan, is the leader of a criminal organization that has stolen approximately $60 million from family businesses across 7 states over the past 4 years, Santos explained. His method involves targeting successful family companies with complex internal dynamics, then manipulating family relationships to gain access to business assets. How does he choose his targets? Dad asked. Richardson researches family businesses extensively before making contact. He looks for companies with substantial assets, internal family tensions, and adult children who feel excluded from business decisions. Your family fit his target profile perfectly. I realized with growing horror how thoroughly we had been studied and manipulated. Richardson had not randomly approached Melissa. He had specifically targeted her because his research revealed her desire for recognition from our parents and her exclusion from Henderson Properties' decisions. The money laundering accusations against your family are part of Richardson's standard operating procedure, Rodriguez explained. He structures his thefts to create paper trails that suggest victim businesses willingly participated in criminal activities. This serves 2 purposes. It provides cover for his crimes, and it prevents victims from cooperating with law enforcement because they fear prosecution. So, our family was never actually under investigation for money laundering? Melissa asked. You were under investigation until Detective Santos contacted us with information about Richardson's methods. The financial structures we initially thought indicated your complicity actually match patterns from Richardson's previous schemes. Your recordings provide crucial evidence that your family was manipulated rather than complicit. Robert Mitchell leaned forward. What does this mean for recovering Henderson Properties' stolen assets? Richardson's organization has been operating across state lines, which gives us federal jurisdiction for prosecution, Rodriguez replied. We have identified several shell companies and offshore accounts where stolen assets are held. With your family's cooperation, we believe we can recover substantial portions of what was taken from Henderson Properties. Detective Santos added, Your recordings are particularly valuable because they document Richardson's methods in real time. Previous victims were too frightened or embarrassed to gather evidence while the crimes were occurring. Your documentation shows exactly how he manipulates family relationships and structures fraudulent transactions. Over the following weeks, our family worked closely with law enforcement to build the case against Richardson's organization. The process was intense and emotionally draining, requiring us to relive the manipulation and betrayal while providing detailed testimony about how Richardson had exploited our family dynamics. But gradually, the investigation revealed the full scope of Richardson's criminal enterprise. He operated with a network of associates who specialized in different aspects of the schemes: financial manipulation, legal documentation, intimidation, and money laundering. Together, they had perfected a system for targeting and destroying family businesses while making their victims appear complicit in criminal activities. Richardson studied your family for months before making contact, Detective Santos explained during one of our debriefing sessions. He knew about Melissa's art background, Savannah's financial expertise, and the family tensions around business succession. He crafted his approach to exploit those specific dynamics. The investigation also revealed how Richardson had planned to destroy our family completely. The downtown development project he had proposed to Melissa would have required Henderson Properties to transfer ownership of all our remaining valuable assets. Once that transaction was complete, Richardson would have disappeared with everything our family had built over 30 years. "You stopped him just in time," Rodriguez said. Based on his communications with associates, Richardson was planning to conclude his Henderson property scheme within the next month. If you had not discovered the fraud, when you did, your family would have lost everything. As evidence mounted against Richardson's organization, federal prosecutors offered our family a cooperation agreement that would guarantee immunity from prosecution in exchange for our testimony. More importantly, the investigation had identified approximately $8 million in recoverable assets that had been stolen from Henderson Properties. "The recovery process will take time," our attorney explained, "but the federal government has frozen accounts containing substantial funds that were stolen from your family and other victims." 3 months after that devastating anniversary party, we received news that would finally provide closure to our ordeal. Federal agents had arrested David Richardson and 6 associates in a coordinated operation across 4 states. The arrests were based largely on evidence our family had provided, combined with testimony from other victims who had found the courage to come forward. "Richardson has been charged with 23 counts of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering," Rodriguez informed us. "Based on the evidence, federal prosecutors expect him to receive a sentence of 25 to 30 years in federal prison." But the most satisfying news came 2 weeks later, when Detective Santos called to inform us that Richardson had agreed to cooperate with asset recovery efforts in exchange for a reduced sentence. "He has provided information about offshore accounts and shell companies that will allow us to recover funds stolen from multiple victims," she explained. "Henderson Properties should recover approximately 75% of your stolen assets within the next 6 months." 6 months later, Henderson Properties had not only recovered most of our stolen assets, but had emerged stronger than ever. The federal investigation had cleared our family of any wrongdoing, and the publicity surrounding Richardson's arrest had actually enhanced our reputation as a business that had courageously fought back against sophisticated fraud. More importantly, the crisis had fundamentally transformed our family relationships. The experience of working together to gather evidence support each other through the investigation and rebuild our business had created bonds stronger than anything we had shared before. Melissa approached me one afternoon as I reviewed financial reports in the Henderson Properties conference room, the same room where we had confronted Richardson months earlier. "Savannah, I owe you an apology that goes beyond what Richardson did to our family." "You do not owe me anything, Melissa. Richardson manipulated all of us." "No, I mean from before Richardson ever appeared. I spent years resenting your success and feeling like our parents valued your achievements more than my creativity. When Richardson made me feel important to the family business, I embraced it because I wanted to prove I could contribute something valuable too." I looked at my sister, really seeing her clearly for the first time in years. The crisis had stripped away the superficial competition and resentment that had defined our relationship, revealing the underlying love and loyalty that had always existed beneath our conflicts. "Melissa, I spent years feeling excluded from family decisions and wondering why my financial expertise was never valued. When I saw you being welcomed into business discussions, I felt like I was being replaced rather than understanding that our family was big enough for both of us to contribute. Richardson succeeded because he exploited the real tensions in our family. He gave me the recognition I craved while making you feel even more excluded. If we had been communicating honestly about our feelings, his manipulation would never have worked." Dad joined our conversation, having overheard from his office doorway. Girls, your mother and I made serious mistakes in how we handled business succession planning. We allowed our fears about family conflict to create the very tensions that made us vulnerable to Richardson's schemes. What do you mean? I asked. We were afraid that including both of you in business decisions would create competition and conflict between you. So we kept you both at arm's length instead of developing a succession plan that utilized both of your strengths. Our attempt to avoid family drama actually created the conditions that made Richardson's manipulation possible. The conversation that followed was unlike any we had ever shared as a family. We talked honestly about hurt feelings, misunderstandings, and missed opportunities for connection. Most importantly, we began developing a new vision for Henderson Properties that would include both Melissa's creativity and relationship skills, and my financial expertise. I have a proposal, I said. What if we restructure Henderson Properties to capitalize on both of our strengths? Melissa could focus on client relationships, project development, and creative vision, while I handle financial analysis, risk assessment, and operational efficiency. Like a true partnership? Melissa asked. Exactly. Co-leaders with complementary skills rather than competing for the same role. Dad smiled broadly. That sounds like the kind of succession planning we should have implemented years ago. Over the following months, we rebuilt Henderson Properties around this collaborative model. Melissa's natural charm and creative vision proved invaluable for client development and project design, while my financial background ensured that our growth was sustainable and profitable. Together, we created a business that was more successful than either of us could have achieved individually. The experience also taught us the value of chosen family alongside blood family. Detective Santos and Agent Rodriguez became trusted friends who had seen us through our darkest period. Robert Mitchell, our attorney, remained a close advisor who helped us implement safeguards against future fraud. These professional relationships had evolved into personal connections based on shared struggle and mutual respect. Most surprisingly, we connected with other victims of Richardson's schemes who had become something like an extended family. The shared experience of manipulation, betrayal, and recovery created bonds that transcended geographical distance and different backgrounds. We organized annual gatherings where Richardson's victims could celebrate survival, share updates on their recovery, and support families still working through the aftermath of fraud. Richardson intended to destroy families and leave isolated victims too ashamed to seek help, Detective Santos observed during one of these gatherings. Instead, he created a network of people committed to supporting each other and preventing similar crimes. The legal resolution came exactly 1 year after that devastating anniversary party. Richardson was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, and his associates received sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. Federal prosecutors called it one of the most comprehensive fraud prosecutions in recent years, with total victim losses exceeding $80 million. Henderson Properties ultimately recovered 87% of our stolen assets, far exceeding initial projections. The federal government also implemented new reporting requirements for commercial real estate transactions that would make similar schemes much more difficult to execute in the future. But the most meaningful resolution was personal. Our family had not just survived Richardson's attack. We had used the crisis to build stronger, more honest relationships than we had ever shared before. The anniversary party that had begun as a celebration of our parents' marriage became the starting point for authentic communication and genuine partnership that transformed all of our lives. As I finish telling this story, I am struck by how completely our family's trajectory changed in the space of 1 year. The humiliation Melissa had planned for me at that anniversary party seems trivial compared to the real dangers we faced and overcame together. The inheritance questions that had seemed so important were resolved through collaboration rather than competition. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced betrayal by someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild after discovering that someone close to you was not who they seemed to be? Share your thoughts in the comments because your experiences help others who might be facing similar challenges. If this story of family revenge and justice served resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength in unexpected places. Share this video with anyone who needs to know that even the most sophisticated manipulations can be overcome with family unity and determination. Thank you for following this journey with me, and remember that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the most important discoveries about who really deserves your trust. From my family to yours, here is to the strength we find when we stand together against those who try to tear us apart.